Overthinking stops when you see this. It's not really about thinking too much, and it's not really about thinking the same thing over and over, at least not in the way you assume. What it actually is your brain taking one piece of information, one thought, and not letting it go, giving it so much more power than everything else you're processing that day. Here's what I mean. I recently had a video that did better than anything else on my channel, and that should have been good information. Hey, this worked. Learn from it. Keep going. Instead, what my mind did is it latched onto it and wouldn't let it go for days. That's overthinking. It's not hundreds of thoughts. It's one piece of information that took over everything else. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep fighting a battle to stop overthinking without ever identifying the root cause. In this video, I want to show you three things: what overthinking actually is, why one thought can end up triggering and spiraling out of control, and how to process that one thought so you can move through it with clarity and make decisions instead of getting stuck ruminating on that same thing over and over. Now, when we think about overthinking, what it feels like is spiraling out of control or being overwhelmed or just thinking about the same things over and over. And the reason it feels that way is because you don't actually slow down enough to see all that frantic noise and dialogue in your head. And when I say look, I mean really look, because more often than not, overthinking is really just circling the same thing from new angles at that same level. So what happens is you take some piece of data, some piece of information, and instead of processing it, integrating it, letting it fold in with everything you already know and understand, it stays stuck on the outside. It can feel like your mind is everywhere at once, but really it's just trying to make you feel safe again. This is the threatened state. This is when you're panicked because you received information that some part of you interpreted as a threat. So it's like this: something comes in, I'm going to say a piece of data, but it could be a comment somebody made. It could be something you see on TV or YouTube. On its own, the input is small. It's just information, and we process information all day. But what happens is your mind isn't just receiving it. It's assigning a deeper meaning to this thing. And what happens is when that meaning touches something that actually matters to you, part of your identity, a deep part of who you think you are, it stops just being data. It becomes something your mind decides it has to figure out before it could feel safe again. This is the moment that overthinking actually starts. And this connects with the previous video I made where I talked about the scripts that are running underneath the self-talk. These are the stories that we don't hear because we never get quiet enough to notice them. Those are stories and dialogues like, I'm not good enough, or I can't mess this up, or I'm not capable. And if you don't recognize the script, it keeps playing and everything that comes in becomes evidence for it. So part of that script, that inner monologue that's playing, decides which pieces of information to overreact to. Overthinking is really overreacting to pieces of information because it connects with that script. So if your script is like, I really want to be good at this, or I need to be good at this, and you get a piece of feedback that says otherwise, that feedback doesn't just stay as information that you can learn from along with everything else. It now becomes this isolated threat because it connects directly to your identity. It's almost like you're not letting it in. It's staying here and all of your attention is going toward it because it's never really the thought or the thinking itself. It's what's underneath it. It's your identity. It's your core. It's how you feel about yourself and the stories that you've told yourself. That's what the information is connected to, which is why you overthink it instead of processing it. So here's where it gets real. I just started a YouTube channel and I mentioned I had a video that did better than anything else I put on it. My previous videos were sitting around maybe 50 or 90 views. And this whole thing has been like a fun, creative project for me. So a jump should really be good information. It's like, hey, cool, this worked. Look, you're learning. Pay attention. Learn from it. Keep going. That's all it should have been. But what I found is that my mind started treating that piece of information way differently. I felt pressure in my chest to make whatever I'm making next just as good. I let this one piece of data and numbers keep turning over and over. It changed how I moved through everything. I was stuck. It wasn't integrating. Anyway, sitting with it one morning, I realized that I wasn't actually learning from the results. I was giving this new piece of information or this new success or temporary bump more weight than everything else combined. Years of data, of information, of experience, of journaling, of everything I know about myself were taken over by one new piece of information or observation because I connected it to something more meaningful. And that took over everything. It took all my attention, and that's where my creativity went. So when this happens, what you're essentially doing is over indexing one data point, and you stop being creative. You stop moving naturally, and you stop trusting the process that got you there in the first place. This is when you get stuck. This is when your mind gets loud. This is when you can't think clearly. And that's what makes overthinking so exhausting and also kind of sneaky. You feel like you're working hard mentally, like you're actually working through something or figuring it out, but you have hundreds of pieces of information in your head and you're giving one tiny data point everything, all of your power, and you're not actually moving. You're burning energy to make yourself feel safe. That's what panic is. That's what overthinking is. So think of your mind like a processor. It's supposed to pull from everything: your experiences, your values, your instincts, everything that you've learned up to this point. The whole system is supposed to work together. But the second one piece of information gets too much weight, it hijacks that. All of your processing power gets pulled toward the one thing, and everything gets really narrow. You're not thinking clearly anymore. And here's what makes most of this worse. We try to fix everything by overthinking harder. We really try to analyze that piece of information, that threatening piece of information, because we think if we understand it, we'll finally feel safe. Or we go another way. We try to distract ourselves and not hear it. Tell ourselves to stop thinking about it, which doesn't work for anyone because the feeling is still there. You have to move through it. But thinking harder or distracting yourself from it doesn't actually process the thought. It doesn't integrate it. It remains charged and unresolved. So here is the actual fix. You're not trying to obey that thought or run from it. You are trying to process it. You're trying to look at it as another data point that happens to be useful to you. Because if it feels like a threat, if you find your body and mind paying attention to it, it's genuinely connected to something that's part of you. And that's worth understanding. It only becomes overthinking the moment it gets isolated and treated like the entire picture instead of one input inside a much bigger data set. So when you catch yourself spinning, ask yourself a few questions. This is how you slow down. You say, what actually happened? Not what you're afraid of, like just in reality. Oh, I got new data. Someone gave me feedback. My video is doing really well. Then what did I make this mean? Now, what part of my script or identity is this touching? What part of the story that I tell myself is this relevant to? What else is true? So not just that data, but everything you know around this category. What do you already know is true? And how can I take this one piece of data alongside everything else to make decisions, to move forward? What can I learn from this? Because this is what you're really trying to do. Processing integrates, overthinking isolates. Same piece of information, completely different outcome, depending on which one you're doing. Overthinking is taking that one thing, feeling threatened by it, circling it, and then trying to force it in until the feeling is resolved. Processing is taking that same piece of data, understand how it connects to you and your story, and letting it settle in with everything else you've already learned or already know. This is where I think it's way more than a tactic, but something deeper. Something important to note is that overthinking points to what you care about: a goal, a relationship, a version of you you're trying to become. That doesn't mean the thought is true. It just means it connects to something that matters to you. Because this is when you actually start to understand yourself. And once you understand yourself better, you make better decisions. Not because you thought harder, but because you finally understand how information, how these pieces, how observations connect to who you are. Thinking feels like thousands of thoughts, but most of the time, it's just one thought that got handed too much power. It's one piece of information that got wired into something deeper. Your identity, your fears, your script, or your sense of safety. So next time your mind starts spinning, take a breath, ask, what meaning am I giving to this information? Where does it connect to? And how can I use it alongside everything else I've already learned? Overthinking is a fog, but with a little bit of attention and mindfulness, we can clear it and find out what is actually there for us the whole time. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Like always, I put a resource for this in the Becoming library. It includes the visual I've referenced throughout this video, plus some reflection prompts. I don't expect you just to sit down and journal about, but look at these prompts next time you're overthinking and ask yourself, because they're designed to help you get space, to help you understand yourself. Thanks again for watching. Talk to you soon.